All right, the Cruiseman and I, we just had coffee and a bagel here at Einstein's in the mid-cities of Dallas and Fort Worth. And we're about to take off here. One-handed start of the Goldwing here. And a beautiful sun to ride into, get blinded, but it'll make for good video because it's a low morning sun. It's called the golden hour. And the golden hour makes you look good. If you're going to do photography, you want to shoot it in the golden hour, which is just after sunrise and just before sunset. And Cruiseman needs a little more time to get ready. You kind of lead, and I'll maneuver next to you for the good shot, and wherever after.
Should we be going this way to get into the sun?
That would be best.
Okay. So we'll just go down here,
and after a few blocks, you can peel off.
Okay.
There's a plan. Hopefully, you'll see this beginning both on my channel and on Cruiseman's Garage. So I'm going to follow him. We're going to ride into the sun. And after a few blocks, you'll peel off. Thanks for having coffee with me this morning.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Another beautiful day in the Metroplex. So it was a great morning. Met the Cruiseman at an Einstein's Bagels at Hebron and Midway. I think this is Irving. Not sure. Might still be North Dallas. where once in a while we'll meet for coffee and talk YouTube channels and Final Cut Pro editing and motion projects, and just have a grand time mixing the Goldwing motorcycle into that mix. And we're talking things we both have an interest in, a strong interest in. The Goldwing motorcycle, of course, and which is just the finest motorcycle on the planet, in our opinion. There's some nits about it. We've talked about that. Nothing is perfect, but I call this I call the Goldwing, the newly redesigned Goldwing, the Mona Lisa of motorcycle design, because it's just so beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, stunning. So we're talking about those subjects and YouTube channels in general. Of course, we're both YouTube creators. He's far more experienced than I am, and I'm learning a lot from him. But in my studies, once in a while I learn something and pass over back to him. I teach him a lot about editing in Final Cut and using motion for motion graphics, and we're just having a grand time. But we look at other people's YouTube channels and we try to learn from them. And you know, the people who are successful with their YouTube channel, we look for things about those channels that we could emulate, steal, okay, that we could steal. I admit it. But just like the movie industry, anytime somebody comes out with a movie that is very popular, other movie makers quickly try to copy the formula and cash in on whatever made that first movie popular. And now you see what I just did in this Goldwing? I practically came to a stop without putting my feet down. This engine, this 6-cylinder horizontally opposed engine, someone called it a boxer engine. Now I've heard the term boxer engine in connection with flat Porsche engines or Volkswagen engines. And it's on my list to look up the definition of boxer engine to see if you could call this flat horizontally opposed 6-cylinder engine a boxer engine. I got off on that tangent. I forgot where I was going with it. Oh, it's so low and forward that it gives this bike a beautiful low center of gravity. And I can practically come to a standstill, almost a standstill, for a few moments without putting my feet down. And it's so easy to turn for a heavyweight bike. Now that the Goldwing has been redesigned to be smaller, it has come down to the size of the big Indian and Harley motorcycles. It's roughly the same size and weight of what they call the heavyweight Harleys and Indians. And but it is so easy to maneuver. Oops, this car. He decided this red light must have looked green, because he almost went before it turned green, actually. So much to love on this motorcycle. I started riding 4 years ago again. I used to ride in the 70s and gave it up to raise a family. But my sister, my little sister, Sissy got me to riding again. She woke up one day and said, "I want to ride a motorcycle," she told her husband. And she and her husband started riding, and then she infected me with that disease. She's a carrier. She'll infect you with the disease to need to ride a motorcycle. Something I didn't think I'd ever do again in my life. And here I am. But she rides a Harley, and so does her husband, and they got me to pick out a Harley first. But I went through 3 or 4 Harleys and not liking any of them. Just wasn't happy. I went to Indian, which was, in my opinion, better. It's a better motorcycle than a Harley. And I was happy with that until I saw the redesigned Goldwing. Now, I've always appreciated the Goldwing and wanted that 6-cylinder engine, but I did not want the behemoth that Goldwings were up through year 2017. And they're just too big. And so, but when this 2018 came along, redesigned to be about the size and weight of the Harleys and Indians that I had been riding, and I saw that incredible design, I was hooked. And I'd also seen videos of guys trying the new DCT transmission and loving it. And even though I couldn't tell for sure that I wanted the DCT on the demo ride, it just wasn't enough, to convince me. I decided to roll the dice and get the DCT, and boy, am I glad I did, because about the 3rd day, you could not take that DCT away from me. It was it's just such an incredible transmission. I'll never go back to manual. And boy, I'll tell you, at the time I bought this bike, I was thinking, I'm taking a risk, because I saw so many guys convinced after riding the DCT that it was the better thing. And so I never thought I'd say it, but I never want to go back to a manually shifted motorcycle again. This 6-cylinder and the DCT is such an incredible combination. It's a ride that you could never give up once you know it. Once you've experienced it, once you appreciate it, you'll never go back. I know a guy who has a 2018 DCT Goldwing, and the DCT model has no clutch lever on the left handlebar, and it has no toe shifter. Sounds strange, but like I said, you gotta get to know it before you understand why the DCT works so well. And but for his 2018 DCT, he bought the optional toe shifter. Now the DCT model will of course automatically shift, and it has paddles on the left handlebar for shifting up or shifting down on demand, but you can add a toe shifter. And so he rides his 2018 Goldwing DCT in manual mode only, because he likes to control the shift with his toe. It's still a DCT, but he never uses it in automatic mode. Only uses it in manual mode and shifts the gears as needed with his toe. Different strokes. Now, I once read the statistic that the DCT can change gears in 1/10 of a second. 1/10 of a second. That's fast. And that's because, by virtue of its name being a dual clutch transmission, it has 2 dry clutches. Now, manual transmissions on motorcycles use wet clutches. And this is so that you can feather them all day and you won't heat them up. You won't destroy the clutch. Dry clutches is like manual shift automobiles. Those use dry clutches, and you can burn up those clutches if you feather them too much. I remember as a teenager, some of my friends loved to really rev up the engine and partially release the clutch and then fully release. That would burn up a clutch. These are dry clutches, but they shift in 1/10 of a second. You can't feather them either. And you may wonder why or how can you feel like there's got to be a need to feather. I don't know how it does it, but you don't need to feather these clutches. So I went to the Dominican Republic, to a resort there, to walk my daughter down the aisle and get her married. And of course, this trip, we just came back July the 19th at 4 days. Before we went, this is when all the news broke about dangers to tourists in the Dominican Republic, and people, every time they heard that I was going there to a resort called Secrets, they wanted to warn me, don't drink from the minibar, and be safe. Well, money was spent, as I'll say, and as I said in the video of my experience when I came back. And so we went through with it, and I did a video, the link is below. I did a video on the experience of going to a resort in the Dominican Republic after all the news broke about tourists dying at resorts in the Dominican Republic. So check out the link below. It's been a great morning having coffee with the Cruiseman and talking to you. So ride safe. I'll see you on the next one.